Well, it looks like you've got about 15 folks here, and we're recording this. I think everybody gets that notice as they log in. So,
Mhm.
want to go ahead and start since it's 4 o'clock?
Absolutely. I like starting on time.
There you go.
So hello to everybody that has logged on and thank you for joining us today. I'm Ann Messman. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I work at Sinai Grace in Detroit Receiving, and I'm going to be the medical school side of the MD MBA program. I'm also the Associate Dean of Graduate Medical Education, so I work a lot with residency programs. I'm going to have Dr. Stoltman introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Stoltman, and I am from the Mike Ilitch School of Business. I've been with Wayne State since 1988. And presently, I'm the director of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Programs and the lead person on the development and now launch of the MD MBA dual degree program.
Thank you, Dr. Stoltman. So you might see some abbreviations in this presentation. MISB is the Mike Ilitch School of Business, in case you're not familiar with that. They have a beautiful building on Woodward that you might have seen right next to the Little Caesars Arena. And then, of course, you know the Wayne State University School of Medicine. We're going to give sort of a brief overview. We're thinking maybe 15, 20-ish minutes about the actual program. Of note, this is being recorded, so if you miss something and you want to go back and watch it later, you will have that ability. We will post this on our website. And there's also a lot of materials on the website as well that can answer a lot of questions you may have. We will also be providing you all with our email addresses and even our cell phone numbers. So if you have any questions, you have lots of ways to get to us to have any of your questions answered. And after our program overview, we will do just a straight up Q&A session. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can raise a virtual hand and we will make sure everybody's questions are answered before the session is over. So we can go into the next slide, which is the program overview. So there are some really big opportunities that you all have if you are considering being part of this MD MBA program. The first part is that it is 4 years, which is very rare. There's only a couple of programs in the country that offer the ability to get both an MD and an MBA within 4 years without extending your graduation. In most programs, it's a 5-year program where you literally step away from medical school for an entire year and focus solely on the MBA and then come back in. And the way that the MBA school has been able to make this happen is that all of your coursework will be focused on the business of healthcare. So it's all going to be completely relevant to the work that you're going to be doing in medical school and in the future as a physician, no matter what field you go into and what your career path ends up looking like. So you will finish this program and already have a leg up on the competition, so to speak, by accomplishing this in 4 years. Not only will it give you the abilities as an MBA, but it also shows very strongly to any residency program that you are able to handle a big load, that you're able to prioritize what's important and what's, how to get all of your coursework done and pass everything successfully, that you are proving yourself early on as a physician leader. As we've sort of stepped away from making exams high stakes, for example, step 1, although it is still extremely important, is now pass fail. You don't get a numeric score at the end. It does make it in a way harder for students to differentiate themselves. A lot of your coursework could be pass fail. Your step 1 exam is pass fail. So how do you tell a program director that you're a really great student and you're going to be a great resident? One of those ways is to commit to something and to follow it through to the end. One of those ways could be, doing a research project and seeing it through all the way to the end, or, working with a certain organization and becoming a leader within that organization as a volunteer. This certainly is another way to set yourself apart as a strong applicant. And in addition, Wayne State's the largest single campus medical school in the country. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that you're in a class of about 300 plus students. This will also make a small community. We're thinking there's probably, we're hoping maybe to get 30 MD MBA students. But if you think about how small of a community that is, this will help you have sort of a community within the medical school where you're going to have friends and colleagues, really easy access to all sorts of different mentors that kind of will make that medical experience medical school experience feel a little smaller than it might feel right now. Of course, from a practical standpoint, you will learn all of the skills to have an MBA. There's obviously a different language, just like in medical school, you're learning, um, different ways of saying the same thing, medial and lateral and things like that, proximal and distal. There's different language that's used in this MBA in the business school. So you're going to learn that language, learn how to navigate different intersections where change is happening, how to influence decisions, all of these things that we think of when we think of a businessman or a businesswoman. Can go on. And so what's interesting about this, there have been people that have been concerned that say, well, if a medical student goes on and gets an MD, MBA, they may never even decide to go to residency. They're going to be so valuable and have such a great background, they might just decide to go straight into business. That has been studied. It's proven not to be the case, that overwhelmingly the same amount of people that go through medical school end up in residency, whether or not they're in a so to speak, regular MBA or MD program versus an MD MBA. So you're just going to go into residency with a lot more knowledge, and you're going to have a lot more opportunities presented to you than perhaps somebody without an MBA. And what you might also see as you start working with different clinicians is that a lot of them, especially in leadership, they do end up getting an MBA, but they do it much later in their career, maybe 10 or 15 years in, when they realize they need that to get the leadership positions that they want. And they end up oftentimes doing something called an executive MBA, which is usually during the weekends or at nighttime. And those MBA programs are extremely expensive. I know because I looked into one. I thought it would be a nice degree to have to add to my skill set. And it was about $70,000 or $80,000 just to get an online executive MBA. So this is so much better. It's going to give you a lot of opportunities down the road, even if you can't really see the opportunities right now. Through the course of the MBA, you'll see all of the doors that will open up to you by having this degree. Dr. Stoltman listed on this slide, you can work with medical services, devices, technology, pharmaceutical companies. Of course, you can work in leadership within a practice group, within a hospital system. The possibilities are pretty endless. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Stoltman at this point to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the program.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Messman. We're going to run through this at a pretty high level just so you can get a sense of what the program is asking of you, and you got a sense from what Dr. Messman just quickly summarized what the program is providing you in the way of value. This is a cohort model, as Dr. Messman indicated. This will be a subset of your very large class of 26. And as a cohort model, it has a couple of key features that you need to be aware of. One is that, and this was mentioned during the session last Friday on the elective tracks that are available to you, you pretty much have to get on the train at this point. And as you go through this, you'll be going through all of the courses in this program with your cohort in a pretty lockstep fashion over time. That was required for a number of reasons, which I won't bore you with, but it does end up providing you this community that Dr. Messman spoke to. And it also allows you to lean on each other and support each other as you go through this particular set of opportunities. The on-ramp for the program is the Business of Medicine elective, which starts here in October. In order to be qualified to apply to and then to be considered for admission to the MBA portion of the dual degree, you'll need to not only complete this course, but the subsequent course, which is offered in the January to March period. Based on your performance in those courses, but more importantly, your performance in your medical school curriculum, there will be a decision made once you apply in January of this coming year. And that decision will be made jointly by individuals within the School of Medicine and individuals in the Mike Ilitch School of Business to make certain that you have both the academic discipline and the time management discipline, but also the academic performance to be able to succeed in what is an extra load. Let's be very clear about the fact that this is another load to try to get this done within 4 years. So we'll review the applications after the Business of Medicine 1B course is completed, and we'll look at your performance throughout the entire first year of medical school, and those will inform the decision as to whether or not to allow you to go ahead then and pursue the MBA. The first of the MBA courses will be offered in April of 2023. I'm going to show you again at a pretty high level and also in some excruciating detail here in a minute some of the time commitments you're going to have to make. And there will be a couple of instances throughout your second, third, and fourth year where you're going to have to come back a little bit earlier from the break period in order to be on track and participating fully within the MBA program. Basically, what we did in the Michaelis School of Business is we worked around the medical school curriculum. All of the courses that you're going to see here in a minute, and the instructors who have been working on developing and revising these courses since February of this year looked to find ways to not overburden you during critical examination periods. And so that required us to do two things. One is to look at occasional Saturdays throughout your second year in particular as places where classes will be scheduled. But also, as I just mentioned, taking back maybe a day or two from your scheduled breaks, which we hold sacred otherwise, in order to be able to put everything together and not have you lose any of the real opportunities that an MBA program can provide to you. We're going to be using across the curriculum a series of tools and frameworks and cases so that you will look at them from different perspectives, and you'll see here in a minute how the curriculum is laid out. So in some courses, you'll be looking at instances of developments within the arena on a purely financial basis. In other instances, you'll be looking at it from the standpoint of management and leadership and strategy. In other instances, you'll be looking at that same context or that same case from the standpoint of marketing or operations and supply chain. So we don't try to hit you with everything at once. We hit you with some context and some examples that we'll come back to repeatedly, and we integrate them throughout the curriculum. And that is something that we do not do in the regular MBA program. And so we're looking forward to being able to provide you this highly contextualized kind of degree program. We're also using a combination of blended delivery systems and some asynchronous systems as well. The blended learning platform, in case you're not familiar with it, involves live lectures, live class discussions, scheduled class meetings, and some online components that would be completed asynchronously and in a time frame where you can more or less pace those out over the course of any particular time frame. More of those details will be forthcoming as we go through this. As we look at what was required here, for some reason now all of a sudden I've lost. There we go. Okay. Our MBA program requires 36 credits. There are two key characteristics of our MBA program that you will not have to deal with. Most MBA programs, ours included, require you, if you didn't have a business undergraduate background, to take what are called foundation courses. We've waived those requirements and built those foundation course concepts and tools within the MBA core courses that everyone has to take. So we've really substantially revised the curriculum to make it fit around your schedule of exams and coursework. The 9 credits or 3 courses from the Business of Medicine that you'll be taking within the School of Medicine will transfer. That's another key characteristic that is not part of our traditional MBA program. Our traditional MBA program, all of your courses are designed and delivered within the business school curriculum. Altogether, 36 credit program. As a cohort program, there are going to be a couple of things that you're going to have to do. I mentioned some of your break periods, possibly losing a couple of days during those break periods. But the other thing is, once you get into the second year, we're going to ask that you not try to take a second elective. This is going to, as you'll see here in a minute, this is going to put a heavy burden on you. And we've done everything we can to try to distribute that burden and make it manageable. But we're also going to kind of protect you from yourself in a sense by not allowing you to drift off too far in another direction with an additional elective. And we'll be working with your counselors there in the School of Medicine to make sure that this is all understood and practical in your case. The cost of the program is $34,000. It will be billed to you in 12 installments starting in your second year. And over the course of the second, third, and fourth year, you'll be getting these regular allotments billed to your account. And a key part of that, as you'll see here in a minute, is your third year is still a clerkship year. There are no MBA courses that you'll be taking during that clerkship. But we distributed the cost of this program over the second, third, and fourth year just so it doesn't hit you in big waves or big chunks. And as we mentioned a minute ago, there is a substantial commitment of time. And the workload ends up working within the confines of what I described to you on Thursday evenings, basically 5:30 to 7:30 in most instances, and Saturdays. And the Saturday sessions would be running from 9 to noon, give or take. The commitment we're looking at in total is about 5 to 10 hours a week. If we're looking at a week where there's a Thursday and a Saturday course, that might be looking more like 10. So the workload we think is manageable, and we'll be looking at that workload and modulating it over time if it proves to be difficult. What you see on the left-hand side of this next slide is too much to take in. I just wanted to use it to point out to you that we have identified those critical exam periods and we are working around those critical exam periods. And that's why you see what you're about to see and why you'll experience certain weeks where there aren't heavy assignments or reading assignments or work assignments, because we want you to concentrate fully on your exams within your medical school curriculum. October to December, the Business of Medicine course, Part 1. January to March would be the Business of Medicine course, Part 2. You would apply to the MBA program here in January of 2023. Once you are admitted to the program, you're going to be basically pursuing an accelerated version of the MBA program. Basically, all the courses are 7 to 8 weeks in length, Thursdays and some Saturdays. The first course up in the MBA portion of your curriculum will be a Social Perspectives on the Enterprise course. Very high level. This is dealing with different stakeholder groups and how they look at the different functions and goals of the organizations that are part of the healthcare ecosystem. I do intend in the Business of Medicine courses to introduce you to these instructors and to get a little bit of a feel, a sample of each of the courses in the program. And Dr. Pirelli, who teaches this first course, has agreed to do that here in the October timeframe. The next course up in the sequence will actually be a managerial accounting course, and the individual teaching that course, Dr. Deb Jones, has a son who just completed residency, has a unique perspective on what you're going through, and understands full well that accounting is not the most intriguing topic area, but she has done a masterful job of working through the curriculum and finding a way for you to be able to catch on to how the accounting function really applies in the medical context as well, and what some of the terms and the tools are really there for. There is another Business of Medicine course to take. It will follow the accounting course. All of these courses are basically happening back to back. There are breaks between the courses. The Business of Medicine course 2, which we haven't talked about just yet, is focused on entrepreneurship and innovation in the healthcare sector. That will be followed by a course on finance, sources of capital, uses of capital. There was a report just this past week that the Beaumont Spectrum merger reported a $100 million loss in the second quarter of this year. So trying to understand how that happens and what that means is among the topics that you would look into in the finance course. Following that, there is a course tentatively operations and supply chain management. We found the individual that was assigned to teach that just accepted a position elsewhere, and so we're looking at maybe changing that course out for a technology trends course. Both of those courses would happen in the November to December timeframe. And then in the period of time where you are finishing out your second year, we have two courses stacked into that situation. One is on management and leadership. The other is on marketing strategy. The instructors on that course are fully aware of what workload you have and what kind of anxiety you might be experiencing in that January to March period. And they've done things as they designed those courses to make sure that that's manageable for you. And again, all of these instructors will be introduced to you throughout the Business of Medicine course. You'll be able to ask them questions about their courses and about the workload in those courses and so on. After the clerkship year, we're going to have some kind of a refresher session. We're going to get together again and kind of help you reboot some of the language from the MBA coursework you had. We have talked about and we are leaning toward providing you essentially with a field guide as you go through your clerkships to just kind of journal some things as you go along to observe and record so you don't completely put it out of mind during the clerkship. That will allow us to jumpstart you back in to the fourth year of the program where the capstone for the MBA program would be completed and the final two courses that you have to take would also be taken. I want to show this to you as a calendar because as we talked about this in the run-up to the official launch, one of the things that those of us who've been working on this kept saying is you're going to want to know what kind of time commitment this looks like and where those places are that you're going to be asked to make an extraordinary effort. The green box here is the Business of Medicine. As again, it starts in October and it runs October, November, December. The next thing you'll do is complete the next Business of Medicine course, which runs January, February, first couple of weeks of March. That is followed by the course that Dr. Pirelli teaches in the Business and Society, and that's done over consecutive weekends, Thursdays and Saturdays. And we're starting back a little bit early then in terms of your break after the end of your first year of medical school. So you would have to be back and ready to be in the classroom on April 6th of 2023. Next up would be the managerial accounting course, which I talked about. That course, the end date for that course is going to be extended so that you can complete some of the asynchronous components over a longer period of time. So there will be the in-class sessions that will be relatively staggered throughout the May and June timeframe, but the course won't officially conclude until the end of July, so you'll have a little bit of extra time to do the asynchronous portions of that. The next course that comes up is the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Business of Medicine course, which runs July and August. End of August, you're moving into the finance course. The finance course overlaps with the operations and supply chain course, assuming that's the course that stays there. And then, as I mentioned, in the January, February, March period, we'll be focusing on the final two courses that we're trying to get in before you take your clerkship year. And you'll see a pretty heavy use of the Thursday, Saturday scheduling in that January, February, March period. The logic here is that in all cases, you'll be able to see what's being expected of you coming. And you'll be able to schedule your time, schedule your breaks, work with the instructors, work with the advisors to make sure that this is manageable. And again, to drop back to the fact that it's a cohort program, being able to support each other and lean on each other is a big part of what we're trying to do here. And we think with all of that in place, you'll be able to successfully navigate the demands of this program. There are website pages that have been put together. I'm showing you two links here real quick. And Ann, I'm going to ask you, Dr. Messman, to join us back in here as we kind of close out the information portion of the session and get ready to open it up to questions. So there's an overview at this first link, and then we've taken an attempt to answer a bunch of anticipated questions. The FAQ has about 28 questions that we've asked and answered for ourselves. But in a minute here, if you've got questions, or at any time if you have questions, you can certainly get a hold of Dr. Messman or myself and ask those questions. If we don't get to your questions today, if you take a little while and you have to think about this some more, we have office hours scheduled starting tomorrow from noon to 1, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. You can drop in and ask questions there. You can also reach out and contact Dr. Messman or myself directly. So, Ann, any final comments on your side?
Yeah, just to make sure you guys understand, the office hours this week are virtual. So you can just virtually drop in and ask us questions anytime. I've been in your position before. I've been a first-year medical student, and you're about, almost 2 months in at this point, and probably starting to feel quite overwhelmed. Maybe even just looking at those calendars are making you feel even more overwhelmed. But I can tell you, having been through medical school, you can absolutely do this. If this is something that is interesting to you, you can absolutely do this. It's just a matter of your level of interest. In addition, I want you guys to understand that part of the reason I've been involved in this, and I've gone to the Mike Ilitch School of Business, which is a beautiful building. I love being here. It's so much nicer than Scott Hall. But I get to go there and listen to them as they're developing their coursework. And they'll sometimes look at me and say, hey, do you have an example of something where maybe some new thing was introduced into your workflow and it was a disaster? And I get to sit there and say, yeah, actually, I was working last weekend at receiving, and we got a new cardiac monitor, and it's beautiful, and it looks like it's gonna do really nice things because it's so pretty, but nobody told us how to use it. And we had a patient that came in cardiac arrest, and we learned very quickly that the defibrillator pads were not compatible with this new machine, and that nobody knew how to turn it on or whether it was even capable of delivering a shock. So we ended up taking this nice, beautiful new machine, putting it on the floor. At some point, someone knocks it over and cracks the screen. And we took our old clunky machine, like from the 80s, and put that back up because we all knew how to use it. And it was compatible with the defibrillator pads. And so, I told them that example, and I said, is that what you mean? And they all said, oh yeah, this has so many aspects. It's why did someone make the decision to buy that machine? Why didn't they do proper onboarding? Like why did this, series of events occur from the mind frame of an MBA? It's totally different, but they are using all relevant examples from healthcare. So you're not going to be sitting there, working through cases or examples that you feel are not relevant to you. So quite honestly, I know that the coursework looks like a lot, but it's been just me sitting in that room. It's been extremely interesting, and I'm actually looking forward to attending some of the coursework, because it doesn't really feel like school. It definitely does not feel like sitting through a gross anatomy lecture. It's much more interesting, and it feels more tangible and relevant. So if you're thinking about doing this, for sure, sign up to take the Business of Medicine elective and just kind of try it out and see if it's something that interests you.
So I'm going to stop sharing just to introduce the idea of questions from anybody out there. So why don't we fire away? That's a different John Gallagher than I thought. There's a good friend of mine named John Gallagher. Any questions out there? Oh, there's one in the chat. Hold on a second. Noor, we've had a lot of discussions about that January to March timeframe, and I guess what my answer to that is that we have been assured that the students who are able to manage their time and have the discipline that it's going to take to do these two programs concurrently will be able to manage that dedicated step period as well. What we've done is we've put it in such a way that you kind of need a mental break anyway. So the mental break is going to be in the direction that Dr. Messman just talked about. Something interesting, something that's very relatable, something that doesn't have a heavy cognitive load on your mind. It's just a way to almost, floss your mind a little bit and just think about something a little different but related while you're getting ready to take that step exam. And we do think that it will work. And now, I give you my solemn assurance that all of the instructors that are part of this, and there's another feature I want to emphasize real quick, but everybody who's part of this understands that if we have to back off at some point, we'll do that. And we're going to make it up in some other place. But we can't look at that as the answer, because part of what's going to be a signal to others as the residency match happens is that you made this happen, that you manage the time, you manage the load, and you made that commitment and you drove through that. As part of the design effort, we've talked to about 30 MD MBAs. By far, most of them did the MD MBA after residency, sometimes 3, 4, 5 years post residency. And every single one of them said they would have loved to have this option. Every single one of them said they would have loved to have this option. But they also realized the burden on you. So several of them were focusing on that same January, February, March period, and raised those concerns. And as we talk through what we're planning and what that's actually going to end up being in practice, their concerns were alleviated. And they weren't completely eliminated, but they were alleviated to some significant degree.
And I think it's also important to note that if you end up signing up for this, it's not like, okay, you sign up and you show up for classes and then nobody, follows up with you. There's going to be a dedicated counselor that will be assigned specifically to the MBA students. I would be meeting with you guys as needed, or as a small group, as a large group, whatever, to just make sure that everyone's happy, that things are not becoming overwhelming. It's not just going to be you showing up, sitting in a desk, and then leaving.
Two other points I'm going to answer this direction. Thank you, Dr. Messon. One is that all of these courses are going to be team taught by by either physicians or medical professionals, as well as the Mike Ilitch School of Business people. So we always have two people in the room who have the perspective that you need to be able to get through that and answer your questions. That's going to help as well. And all of the faculty, and we have this larger cohort of mentors that have stepped up to help you as well. When earlier slides spoke about network capital, it's going to be this roughly 45-person team that's going to surround you as you go through this program and enable you to keep moving through this program. We're going to provide tutoring if you need tutoring. We're going to provide coaching and counseling where you need coaching and counseling. We're do everything we can to get you through this. I'm going to answer Stephanie's question. The answer to that question is absolutely yes. If using loans for medical school, do you know Wayne increases the loans given to cover the tuition of the MBA? Absolutely yes. That is the plan. And the cost of this MBA is roughly half of what an MBA would typically cost you. Now, the Wayne State MBAs, that's the price of the Wayne State MBA. But most of these 5-year MBA programs do an upcharge on that stop out year. Any other questions out there?
I had a question in regards to our 4th year.
Yep.
Could you describe maybe more about what the capstone project encompasses?
Yeah, great question. So the capstone in the MBA program is a strategic management course, which asks you to take a systems view using all of the different business disciplines to approach a particular problem area or to look at a particular business case. One of the conversations we had about a month ago was with a physician who was making the decision about whether or not to open up, they were part of a private practice group, open up a diagnostic facility to complement what they were doing in the private practice. So that would be a good example of a project that you could take on within the MBA program to fully price out what a facility is going to cost, how you're going to fund that facility, how you're going to staff that facility, etc. All right. And there's literally dozens of examples that I could give you. So the projects are part of what we're going to try to do in the business of medicine class, and with this this journaling that we're asking you to think about during the clerkship, is to find a project that you can approach in that 4th year and make that either on your own or with a couple of your classmates a project. We're not going to force a project on you. The idea is for us to discover something that's interesting to you that you can kind of dig into and use as a workbench to put all of your knowledge to practice, but also have something to talk about when you're going through the residency match process as well. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions out there?
There was a question in the chat about about when does M3 start versus when do the March or January, February, March M2 classes end for the MBA? I don't know if you
Last
saw.
week of March, the beginning of clerkship. I think you get a break before the clerkship starts. We should be able to get you that answer.
Yeah.
There's a break in there, so you're not running out of those last two classes right into clerkship. There is a break that's sequenced in there. I just don't know the exact dates. I believe the clerkship begins in either first or second week of April.
Yeah, there's a 0% chance that the MBA courses will overlap with any part of M3. They are not compatible. They cannot hang out together.
I have a quick question on the curriculum.
Yeah.
Is there any section that would be like personal financial management? You know, there's a lot of things that are like doctors are so bad with money. So is there any connection to helping doctors once they do graduate?
Absolutely. And maybe not enough, but there is. The two professors who have been working to basically get out of the usual finance course to make it very focused on the financial skills you need as a physician leader have reserved, I think, the last week or two of their course for exactly that. The one individual who teaches that in our program is also an advisor to a student group in the medical school that basically has asked the same question, and it's a little bit less formal. It's more of a workshop Q&A thing, but in this program there's at least a week, I think there's 2 weeks at the end of the finance course where that is the focus, because it turns out some of the same things you need to understand to be able to manage your own finances and make investments as someone who's likely to earn a pretty good wage. Those are the same kinds of fundamentals that you need to be able to make a lot of business decisions. You need to know how debt is secured and what debt looks like and how you can calculate the return on an investment. Very similar constructs, but put into a different construct, right? But yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question regarding other MD electives. You mentioned that during year 2, we likely wouldn't be able to pursue elective options. So how would this program affect electives throughout the entire MD curriculum, not just during years 1 and 2?
Anne?
I guess I'm not, which electives do you mean outside of years 1 and 2? Do you mean like clinical rotations?
My understanding is that we need a certain amount of elective hours to get the MD. So how would that affect the MBA program? How would that affect our electives for the MD program?
So the electives we're talking about are like the education research elective or the clinical research elective, those nighttime ones that happen during M1 and M2. Those are the electives we're talking about, not like clinical electives that would affect your graduation. The electives that we're talking about are the ones during your first year that only happen on Wednesday nights that are not in any way required to get your MD.
Yeah, and let me jump in there. So Dr. Messman's got that right. Though I think of all the electives that are out there, the two that were presented last Friday that would be affected by this, there's one on policy advocacy, which is very much a traditional kind of class. So you would be taking two fairly traditional classes, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So maybe you can do the healthcare policy part 1, which is October through March of next year, but maybe not go on and take the second segment, right? And the other is the quality course. I have no, that's a new one, so I really don't know much about that. But we're going to be in the operations and supply chain course that we're teaching. We're going to give you some of that quality material as well. So those two are relatively similar to what we're talking about, a kind of a traditional course with readings and assignments and so on. The research elective course and the community service elective course, quite frankly, I don't think either one of those have the same kind of time parameters on them. So, working with the advisors over in the medical school, those might be exceptions. But I think for the healthcare policy course and the quality initiative course, we might stick to our guns on that because we're just kind of protecting, as much as anything, your peace of mind. Because there's going to be an awful lot of work trying to take your current curriculum in the medical school plus essentially 2 other courses, right? Right?
Yeah, just going off of the question about like personal finance of physicians and stuff. I was also wondering, like, are there going to be any topics that are directed of how to best run like private practices and how like learning the ins and out of like generalized strategies for setting up a successful private practice as a physician as well?
Definitely. So those are some of the cases that we'll be introducing across the different courses in the MBA curriculum. It's something you'll also get exposed to in the business of medicine course that's coming up here. We bring in individuals who set up direct primary care practice, pediatric practice. There's somebody who's just opened up a clinic. So we'll bring those people in. You'll get to learn from their story what they had to think through and how they had to manage all of the parameters that have to come together for that to come together.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So you don't have to ask all your questions now, but if you have them, we're here to answer them.
I had a more logistical question in regards to all of the sessions that you're holding throughout this week. Are they all separate, like you're going through different information, or are they all just so that people who can't make it today can make it tomorrow, whatnot?
Great question. It's the latter. So somebody who can, or you think about something overnight and you want to drop in and ask another question. We're just trying to create a convenient place for people to be able to just drop in and ask questions. In the old world, I would be sitting in an office and you could just walk up and just, say, have you got a minute? So.
The office hours will not have any presentations. So you're not missing, you're not like, going to miss certain information if you don't come to one of them. It's purely just Q&A.
Thank you.
And we'll use those sessions to probably update the FAQ document that's on the web.
Got it. Great.
Yep. You're welcome. James.
Hello, my question was for traditional MBA students. Is there any talk of this becoming a concentration for them?
There is. So what we're doing is we're taking it a step at a time. We started out with 4 possibilities, ended up narrowing to this one because this one had the highest potential for getting to the place that everybody is saying they want to get to, which is waves of physicians in training entering into the workforce with a different skill set. The next piece of what we're going to do, and quite frankly, probably during the 4th year courses that you'll take as part of this, is blending you into the general population of the MBA students in some degree, so that there's that network capital that you build up as well. And the reason why we don't have a definitive answer to that is we went through a dean change ourselves, and our new dean just started here on July 11th. And she is very interested in a healthcare MBA. And so we're looking at how all of this stuff will overlap and complement. But that's another great question. We do intend to have availability to the general MBA population. Quite frankly, they don't see what you're going to see. And they won't see these courses on the roster of courses that they can enroll in. These courses are yours and yours alone. Other questions? We've had probably up to now, I think we're up to almost 50 physicians out there who've heard about this that want to take this. So that's the other thing we're looking at is is a program for people who are past residency and have been out 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that's going to be the other part of what we're going to end up looking at in the next 6 months or so. But you'll be ahead of them.
Just to add one more thing, as someone that I've reviewed thousands of residency applications for those applying to emergency medicine over the past decade or so. If any of you are thinking to yourself, well, this is going to take up a lot of my time and I want to do 10 volunteer activities and I want to be involved in 3 student organizations and I want to travel to Africa and I want to do that. And you're thinking about you want 15 things on your CV, but this is only one thing. I would suggest that you not think of it that way, that for us, when we're reviewing applications, quite honestly, when I'm looking at a CV and it has, oh, I did this volunteer activity for 2 hours and then this thing and then this thing, and applicants list 50 different things that they did for 2 hours, it doesn't really mean a lot. It's more about quality than quantity. And so if I had an applicant that dedicated themselves to one thing, whatever that one thing is, whether it's MD, MBA, or starting a student organization and making it have, life even after you leave medical school, whatever that one thing is, I would just advise you guys, generally speaking, to pick something and just do it really, really well, rather than focusing on trying to do 10 different things in a, mediocre way or without any leadership.
I had another question for, this is for Anne. In regards to what you have seen with those that perhaps applied to residency programs, like specialty programs with an MBA, how, I guess, possible is it to be able to do research, for example? Because I know specific residency programs would want to see letters of recommendations or at least some work in specific, in those specialties as a medical student.
Yeah, are you thinking like ENT, urology, those sorts of pretty academic specialties?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a program director for ENT or urology, although I am the designated institutional official for those residency programs. So I oversee those program directors and I understand the academic environment that they require. My suggestion would be you do, in a way, for those sort of specialties, need a little bit of both, but that doesn't mean that you should have your MBA life and your research life and they should not overlap. If you are getting the MBA, you can turn that into a research project that's relevant to the field that you're going into and become an expert in that, get some papers perhaps published, form some strong mentorships. I would combine the two. They should not, the Venn diagram should have a lot of overlap. They should not be totally separate. And it's, in my opinion, doable to do both. If you're applying for one of those super competitive specialties, you're going to be working really hard in medical school regardless. So you might as well do something that you're really interested in and turn that into your, sort of the foundation of your research.
So just to go off of that then, does the MBA program, the MD MBA program, kind of like leave room for those type of opportunities where, like, I know there's the capstone project, for example, where you're able to kind of create your own project and present it and develop it. Are there other opportunities such as that, but more in terms of research, to be able to work with, let's say, someone from the cancer center or research center and be able to develop some type of method for improving how cancer patients, their life coming into clinic and improving it in quality improvement and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Stoltman answer this, but the part I just wanted to convey is that we have interviewed and worked with, I can't tell you how many dozens of MD MBAs, and the MDs are in all different fields. Most of them are local, but statewide and even across the country. And it would be sort of the point of us forming this huge network of MD MBAs is for exactly that, to say, you know what, I know somebody that does the work that you're interested in. They have an MD MBA and they are looking for people to, mentor or to work with them on a project. And so that's the whole point of us doing all these interviews and forming all these relationships with MD MBAs that are already successful and out there, is to plug you guys into exactly those opportunities. I don't know if Dr. Stoltman has anything to add.
So I'll just pick it up where Dr. Mesfin dropped it. I think that's point one, exactly the point that we were trying to make earlier, but probably not too effectively. The spaces that are in this program are not that huge, but there are ways to basically get twice the bang for the buck as you go through, as Dr. Messman was indicating. So I don't know the specific project that you're talking about. If it's more of a bench science project, a little bit harder to make the case. If it's about value-based care, a huge part of the current scene, and being able to do some research into value-based care in a particular practice area, absolutely, right? So I just think it's going to end up being a little bit of us getting to know each other and going through. And something else I should emphasize: you're not making a commitment until March of 2023, April of 2023. You have a lot of time to explore questions like these with the physicians that we're going to be bringing into the classroom during the business of medicine course. And if those people can't answer those questions, we'll bring the people into that class that can answer those questions. We have not just, by the way, worked with MD MBAs. We have probably just as many individuals that don't have the MD MBA. Some of them have an MD MPH. Some of them just have the MD. And what all of them bring as perspective is what you need to know as a physician entering into one of a dozen different pathways. And they're looking at that residency as mostly the place where you'll get a lot of clinical expertise, and your medical knowledge and your clinical knowledge will start to come into shape and strengthen. The ability to add a layer on top of that, which is about the quality of the care, the cost of the care, the access to the care, is really where this program differentiates you. To not just be looking, although that's extremely important, at the quality of the care or the clinical experience, but to be able to step back and look at the larger context and be able to see how this is affected from the standpoint of who's paying and what the reimbursement rates are and all the rest of it. And so it's a great question, but I would say keep asking that question. If you're not getting an answer to that question, we'll just keep beating the drums until we find the person that can answer that question. But my understanding is that, and I think this is a little bit connected to the question that was asked earlier, those two electives that are also still out there, the one on research, not the medical education research, I'm not discounting that, but the research elective, I think that's one that you can continue with if you chose to. And so that's another way to think about not having to pick one or the other. You'll be able to continue on a research track of a sort as you go through the second year and on to the third and fourth year. I'm working with four now third year students. It's slowed down a lot during their third year on different research projects as a function of having met them through these other encounters, right? And they're looking at questions that those people who are out there hiring people or looking to partner with people, questions that they're interested in getting answers to. Chief orthopedic surgeon over at Henry Ford is one of the people we've talked to. And he said, if you can give me interns, I'll take them. And he's not talking about interns to just, move people. He's talking about interns who can help with research. And those are the kinds of opportunities that we want to keep multiplying as we go through this program.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we don't have to sit here and stare at each other. If you don't have any other questions, you have plenty of opportunities to ask them. I'm going to put the slide back up for a second that has Dr. Messman and my contact information in case you didn't get that. And again, the office hours that's in your Canvas calendar if you want to stop in either tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday. And if those times aren't convenient, we can figure out another way to meet with you. I sincerely hope that you're interested in it, and if you're just kind of unsure, all I can say is ask the questions. Let's see if we can get you the answers that will help you make up your mind. I'm going to close that
Thank
now.
you.
We'll see our faces again. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good day now.
You're welcome. You too. I'm going to stop the recording and